find some of your family history in them. She has some real gems in there. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on the Campa, Acuna, and Chan families. And the interesting thing I found in putting this together, and I had known most of the history growing up, is these families are responsible for 5 of the restaurants that were very prominent back in the day of Old Route 66. So between the Chan family mostly and the Lum family, as well as on the Campa Acuna side, we'll be able to touch on these 5 historic restaurants of our town. So we really don't know who we are unless we know where we've been, and we've all heard that saying at some point in our life. So my story begins with my Nana Catalina Campa. She is an older sister of Mike Campa, who again I alluded to, Zibby Campa. That was her father-in-law, although she affectionately always called him Pa, from what I remember. But Uncle Mike Campa was Zibby's father-in-law. And my Nana was born in 1908, April 6th, in Signal, and we lost her on April 5th, 1985, in Tempe. She married Antonio, who went by Tony Acuna, born in 1898, October 26th, also in Signal, and passed away here in England April 11th, 1978. They were married May 1st, 1924, and over 22 years they had 10 children. So again, Penny, you're welcome. How do I ignore 10 children, especially when 7 of them were girls and all members of this society alone, right? Or still, and we have a lifetime member in Aunt Virginia. Aunt Alice is a member. Unfortunately, she's in Berkeley and can't attend meetings. Aunt Gertrude is here, and then my mother Ernestine. So out of the 7 girls, these are the 3. There were 3 boys out of the 10 children. Unfortunately, I'll mention it later in the presentation. The oldest boy, Arthur, we lost to a motor vehicle accident the night of my mom's junior prom in 1962. He was only 21 when he passed. The other 2 brothers are alive and well. David is here in Kingman. And then Tommy, who was not only the last boy, but the last of the 10, is in the Bay Area. Again, a lot of old photos being lost to that unfortunate house fire, but this goes back on my Tata Tony's side. This is his grandmother on the left. Her name was Reyes Venegas, born in 1836 in Sonora, Mexico. Passed away in Parker in 1927. The photo on the right, and in particular the young lady on the left of that photo, was his mother, Gertrude Tula Diendes. And I mentioned Aunt Gertie or Aunt Gertrude. That is her namesake. So she was named after her grandmother. Ma'am. Okay. I mentioned the files that we have in this room. Here you go. So named after godmother as well as grandmother. So again, wonderful resources that we need to utilize, the ladies in this room. And then Nana Tula, as she was called, passed away in Los Angeles in 1964. This is an iconic family photo in our family because this was one of the remaining photos that Nana Catalina had. And she is the young lady, my pointer doesn't work, sorry, over here on the far right. So I believe Uncle Mike might be one of the babies in this photo in Virginia. Not yet, he wasn't born yet.
I think he's sitting there with his mother.
Okay, that's what I thought, that he was born, but anyway, this is only 10 of them. I think they came from a family of 13. Tata Tony again, he was pretty much a cowboy, ranch hand, and a miner. I was told that his mother sent him to the Signal area when he was 13 to begin cowboying. And he loved his horses, his donkeys, his burros, you name it. So this is Tata Tony on the left. And on the right, the photo is labeled Tony Acuna and Herman Esquera. This name sounds familiar, Bill Williams. And they were on his property. And Herman Esquera, is our cousin. This is my Tata Tony in Griffith Park, 1922. Loved the photo. This was some sort of dance or gathering back in the day. And I just loved the outfit and the smile on his face. Obviously, he was a little bit older for my visual memories, but again, just finding out the stories about what he enjoyed to do when he wasn't ranching or mining. So he loved going to these dances and affairs in Los Angeles, the big city. Yeah, he wasn't married yet. He was still a young man doing different things. And again, being a miner and a cowboy, there he is with one of his beloved creatures. This photo has a story. And for any of you who have done that drive, as I mentioned, on the 93, you see these, and they look really tiny on those mountains. Until you get close to them, they're pretty big. And everyone always asks when Aunt Virginia showed the story, how in the world did Tata Tony get up there? Gunny sack. So he used a gunny sack on the back side to climb up those spines, tuck it under his backside, and sit in that saguaro because he wanted a photo of himself in that saguaro. And this was on a drive to Los Angeles, I was told, on one of the medical trips they had to make for my Uncle Arthur, their oldest boy. You'll see in a photo later, unfortunately, he was born with a tumor on one side of his face, and Kingman could not handle something like that back in the day. So they would drive on old Route 66 to Los Angeles with probably 7 girls and him, unless some of the girls stayed back to, manage the home. So on one of the trips to Los Angeles, Tata Tony climbed up in that tree, and everybody loves this photo of him. It's just crazy. And this is the visual memory I have of my Tata Tony. I wasn't born until 71. Again, he passed in 78. So this is roughly around one of the last photos we have of him. And again, just a cowboy, true, and a miner. That's what he did. He loved these old buildings. And he helped a gentleman build that, a stepfather, you said? Here we go, family file, right here. That's what I cannot figure out. We're getting Signal maybe. We're not sure. Seligman, Night Creek. I've gotten a variety of stories. This is the one thing I will mention. Aunt Virginia writes names and dates and places on the back of her pictures like this, and she's ingrained it in some of us as a younger generation. There were very few photos that didn't have something on it, and unfortunately that one of Tata did not. This is Nana Catalina, and these are 2 of the daughters, Kate and Marion. And I mentioned 7 girls. Kate, Tally, Marion, Alice, Gertie, Virginia. I'm gonna pass this test. Kate, Tally, Marion, Virginia, Alice, Gertie, boy number 1, Arthur, boy number 2, David, interrupter of the boys, Ernestine, and number 10, Tommy 10. So this is the eldest daughter, Kate, who's back to us, and then a baby Marion in my Nana Catalina's arms in Yucca. So that's all the picture said, Nana with Kate and Marion, Yucca. This is the yard in Yucca with my Nana Catalina, Grandpa Tony, the eldest daughter, Kate. Tally took the photo, why she's not in it. Marion, Alice, Gertie, and Ginny. And the picture was marked Yucca 1938 or 39. I do want to point out that fence in the background that you all see, those are ocotillo cactus spines. And this is what they did. They used what they had. We go to Home Depot, we order off of Amazon. These people, true pioneers through and through. They had to be innovative and creative and use what they had. That's right. He built this fence on their property, kept the snakes out, kept the other little critters out of the garden that my Nana would try to tend. So just wanted to point the ocotillo fence out. They also make good whipping sticks from what I may or may not have heard. All right. Photo on the left is a cousin, Mary Kiro. Nana Tula, who I showed you a photo of earlier. Aunt Gertie's namesake is in the center. And then there's dear sister Marion. That was in Los Angeles in the 1940s. Photo on the right is my Tata Tony Alex Martinez, and then Kate, Callie, Gertie, Alice, Jenny, and then the Labus boys who are our cousins.
That's the home pass.
And that's Cajon Pass, historian as we speak. Child number 1, this is technically Catherine. Family called her Kate, but she was really named Catalina Jr. after our Nana. She married into a family who, her husband, Jess Arredondo, who we called Chewy, and that's the thing, you all probably have them. People who have names in your family, and they get called something else, and you may go all your life never knowing that so-and-so's name was really Duke Elvin, Aunt Jenny's husband. I knew him as Uncle Duke. His name was Alvin. Same thing, Aunt Kate, her mother-in-law to be was Carolina, and it was too close, I guess, in pronunciation that she stopped going by Catalina and went by Catherine or Kate. She was born April 18th, 1924. 2 Januaries ago, we lost her, just shy of her 99th birthday. That was her 8th grade graduation in Yucca in 1939. Going through photos, Tally, who was the next daughter, also had her 8th grade graduation in 1939 because that was the schoolhouse in Yucca. You kind of morphed grades, you blended.
Yeah.
Some of them were allowed to attend at a younger age if they behaved and listened. Aunt Virginia shared those stories with me. So, dear Aunt Kate spent most of her time in Flagstaff. Her husband Chewy worked for Santa Fe, so they actually lived in Signal for a while. This photo on the left are Aunt Kate's daughters Lenore and Priscilla Sue, and the one on the far left is Ernestine. Lenore is her niece who is 1 year older than her, because that's what happens. The older ones get married, start having a family, then the younger ones come along. The photo on the right are those same 3 ladies last July in Phoenix in the same order. So again, I had to scrap a lot of these photos off my cell phone, pardon me, when I was asked to do this, because I have my photos at home in California where I have not been long enough to do this kind of project. So between cell phones and pictures off people's pianos and Aunt Jenny's bag of photos, this presentation would not be possible. So again, those are the 2 nieces of my mother, Aunt Kate's daughters, pretty much like sisters because they were the same age. And then again, last July, right before my mother's surgery, they came to Phoenix so we could have one last hurrah. Margaritas may or may not have been involved. Nana Catalina, I love this generation photo, and I just got it on Friday because Aunt Jenny brought another batch of pictures to Aunt Gertie's. So that is Nana Catalina, the oldest daughter, Kate, her oldest daughter, Lenore, and then the only child Lenore had, Shireen. And Shireen's daughter, Gabby Short, has been a recipient of your lovely scholarship, and Shireen and Gabby wanted me to extend their gratitude as Gabby received her degree in nutrition from NAU. And it's by being so close with these older women in our family, it inspired her to go on to work at an assisted living facility, doing their nutrition and dietary planning, as well as getting food out to those that don't have means to shop or go out and eat, like a Meals on Wheels sort of, for the women in the Flagstaff area. Lenore and Susie, daughters of Aunt Kate, for Mother's Day, just love that smile on Aunt Kate. Really reminds me of Nana Catalina's smile. This is one of the sisters, Natalie, who goes by Tally. Right before she passed, we lost her, I think in 2016 or 13. I'll have to look at the date. It'll be on the slide. And everybody loves this photo of Aunt Kate on the left. It's just that smile. She was just peace and kindness and didn't know a stranger. She fed many with what they had. Again, that's what our pioneers did. Everyone's family was family, you know. And then Aunt Kate at her home, she collected owls, the little owl pillow behind her. Here's Tia on her 96 in her home. So that was the last of the photos on Aunt Kate. Daughter number 2, Natalie, who went by Tally, born December 1st, 1925, and it was 2013 when Aunt Tally passed away. This photo, probably marked by Aunt Virginia, Yucca, with the Yucca Depot in the back, June 10th, 1939. This is where restaurant number 1 comes into play, because across the street, where we have that nice Walgreens, used to be Wait for it. Here is Donna Catalina at the 8th grade graduation in Yucca, where again Aunt Kate and Aunt Tally graduated the same year, 1939. Just love those dresses. And then the wild pies were in the backyard for these, pioneers growing up. So we have the wild pies in 1943 with Aunt Tally, and then the Gloriana, Tally as a teenager, Gloriana in 1930s.
Yeah.
And then on the left is Aunt Tally at her high school graduation, 1943. And one of the proud moments that I found out, I knew Aunt Tally was a nurse, and she worked at Mojave General downtown. Never got to see the new hospital up here because she had moved on to Phoenix and was a nurse at Phoenix Indian Hospital there, where she retired. But her nursing career started as a cadet nurse corps for World War II right out of high school, and that just blew my mind. And I was just so touched that that's how she served. There it is, City Cafe. So how did the City Cafe come into the Campa Acuna lineage? Aunt Tally married a Texan by the name, and I knew it was Uncle Mac all my life. It was Uncle Mac, Uncle Mac. Richard Hewlin McCaslin and his mother, Willie, ran the City Cafe. Another connection we have is the young lady at the end of the table, Sue Benjamin Snow. Her mother was a waitress there. So any of the Acuna daughters that worked at the City Cafe, they were trained by Mrs. Benjamin. Uncle Mac, again, I mentioned he was from Texas, a little town called Davila. He ran away, I was told, by his daughter, Kathy, at 15. He didn't want to be a cowboy rancher like his dad. Lied about his age, joined the Merchant Marines. Came to Kingman when his mom opened the City Cafe and met my Aunt Tally. This photo, a bunch of men, not related to our daughters at all. However, the gentleman in the center, white cowboy hat with glasses, was Richard Hewlin McCaslin Sr. And you might notice the gentleman to his left looks like a very famous gentleman with 3 initials, LBJ, who was Senator of Texas at the time. And I guess he and the original Uncle Mac were very close Texan buddies. So I just threw that in there for a bit of American history. And here is Uncle Mac with Aunt Tally. They had 2 daughters, Kathleen Ann, who goes by Kathy, and Gaynell. Kathy lives in Cave Creek with her husband Alan Tapaja, how we are related to the Tapaja family. They have a son Nathan, there's a picture in here. Gaynell unfortunately passed away a week after Kate did. She had some complications due to lupus and whatnot and Parkinson's, so we lost cousin Gaynell 2 years ago. This was the night of Kathy Ann's junior prom. And the recent photo, this is Aunt Gertie's home, and you're going to see a lot of pictures in this presentation. Not one family member do I have not being at Aunt Gertie's house or Aunt Ginny's house. That's where all the family gatherings were. So we have Kathy Ann in the black shirt, that is the oldest daughter to Aunt Tally and Uncle Mac. Gaynell, the youngest daughter on the right. And there is Aunt Erna, Cousin Cheryl, and Aunt Virginia and Aunt Gertie. And then that's Cousin Davy Jr., who is the oldest boy of Uncle David. And there is Nathan Tapaja. This was taken in December in their home when I was taking Aunt Gertie to the airport to go on a trip to see her new great-granddaughter. And this is how I remember Aunt Tally. This is the Aunt Tally I have memories of. So, again, she passed in 2013. Daughter number 3, Marion, also known as Tia Manning. Marion Laura, born 1927, September 9th, passed away October 4th, 2006. Photo is the eldest daughter, Kate, then Tally, youngest being Tia Manning. Marion at the boarding and the mine. Again, this is the backyard to these young ladies. And I just love the ribbons braided into the hair. Must have been some fancy occasion. And then this is Tia Manning as a young woman. She babysat for the Spector family, and I don't know how many of you all recognize that name. They ran a shoe store somewhere in downtown Kingman. and I believe they had that funky colored brick home. Am I correct, or am I confusing that home? Stone, kind of tucked up in the mountains back behind Palo Christi area. She babysat for them, and they decided to move on to Beverly Hills, and they took Tia Manny with them. So she is a proud graduate of Beverly Hills High School. And then they went on to go ahead and send her off to business school. She spent most of her time in Las Vegas after that. She has a son, Gary, who I'll show photos of. This is Aunt Marion and Aunt Tally, and the Wallpies is, again, their backyard. And she married a young man, Ralph Arvizo, and this picture on the left is just hilarious. They all held around together. Is Aunt Kate, was soon to be Aunt Marion's husband, Ralph. And then Uncle Matt Hewlin is in the back with Aunt Tally. So that photo on the right, I can't say for sure, but it might have been taken in Los Angeles. But Aunt Marion on the right. Cool thing about Aunt Marion, you'll probably see 4 or 5 different hair colors. She experimented with hair color. And then this is great Aunt Laura, that was Tata's half-sister, Tata Tony. Cousin Donnie Levy is in there somewhere. And that was in Aunt Gertie's living room. Aunt Marion and Aunt Virginia. And that is her son Gary. That screams 70s, just with the hair, by the way. And Gary is living in Las Vegas still with grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Aunt Gertie's house as well. There's Aunt Marion in the back, Aunt Gertie, her son Gary, the youngest boy of the Acuna family, Tommy, and then that is one of Aunt Gertie's sons, Victor, who also passed away during COVID. And woo, that was Aunt Gertie's house as well. A photo being taken by Cousin Gary, Aunt Mary, and Aunt Virginia, gathered around the dining room in Aunt Gertie's home. Gary got to go visit Aunt Kate shortly before she passed. We love that photo, so I threw him there to see an older Gary. And then Aunt Marion just loving her life in Vegas. After Uncle Ralph passed, this is her second husband, Alex Rodriguez. He lived in Vegas as well, and that's where they both eventually ended up passing away. Our birthday girl will be 94 on 3/30/30. Aunt Virginia, as well as Sue Snell, share a birthday. I think there's a gap in the years. They say happy birthday, Aunt Virginia. So this is a baby, Jenny, as we call her, and Yucca. Here's a young Aunt Virginia. Wallpies or Boreana? Help me. Boreana. And then Tally and Jenny, 1950. The cars and the clothes, let me tell you, I did not put some of the pictures up. I showed them to family. But there are some photos of these young women that are just pin-up worthy. I tell you, they were beautiful women. They still are. They still are. I mentioned that Aunt Jenny went on to marry a young man who I knew my life and everybody is Uncle Duke, but this is Elvin Sutherland. And the story goes, Uncle Duke and Tata Tony were in the same carpool together to go build Davis Dam. And there was a young Virginia, Acuna, working at Western Auto. And they would stop in there on their way to Davis Dam and or back, and the love story began. And because of the construction of Davis Dam, Aunt Jenny had a picture that she took, and it was marked construction of Davis Dam, 1949. Uncle Duke also built the Jersey Turnpike, and the best story I remember from Aunt Virginia is they lived out of their 1940-something Nash, and I guess that car is like a big queen bed in the back. I don't know. But to hear these stories of them living in a car, building the Jersey Turnpike, I was like, you people have lived. Made me feel like I haven't done anything.
Can I say something?
You may.
That picture of Davis.
You took it.
I only took that picture because that's when he was working when he fell.
Yes.
60 feet into 2 feet of water.
Oh, he's the one that.
He's the one that fell and lived. Yes, ma'am.
And the guy, maybe his
Just read that
relatives
story
here,
my whole life.
Herman Bakers.
Herman Baker, is there a relative here?
He's the one that pulled him out. She just left.
Oh, well, Herman Baker pulled Uncle Duke out after the 60-foot fall. See, it's all tied together.
You know you're from Kingman F.
There you go. Picture of Uncle Duke and Aunt Virginia with some friends. Don Keller. If anyone remembers Don Keller. Aunt Jenny and Uncle Duke went on to have two boys, Philip and Michael. Also Lenore and Susie, who were Aunt Kate's daughters are in this photo, and a young Gary Arvizo, Aunt Marion's son. So Philip and Michael Sutherland, young boys, and this is also labeled the Sutherland boys. And I believe it said Baldwin Park in Virginia, and it was 19. Well, it was in Baldwin Park. She said it doesn't matter, but she'll tell me in the car what it was. This is cousin Mike, present day, and like his father, who I mentioned, construction of the dam, built the drinking pipe. Uncle Duke was a phenomenal carpenter, and his son Mike has carried on that tradition of carpentry. Philip went on to have two children, Tanner and Devin. This is Nana Catalina with Tanner in Aunt Gertie's living room. And I can't show every single picture, but I'm gonna do my best. That is no longer baby Tanner. That is a young man, tall as can be, who has a family of his own now. And this was in front of Aunt Virginia's home down in Catherine's Landing. And that is his sister Devin. So Aunt Jenny's grandson and granddaughter who have a family of their own. And I have a picture in here because it's Aunt Jenny's favorite of her great-granddaughter, Andy Grace. So this is Andy Grace and her canine brothers and sisters. And Andy Grace now has a brother who was born this last year, Sonny Christopher. So there's a little grown Andy Grace. And then Aunt Jenny, who went over for a visit before the holiday to see her great-grandson. Aunt Jenny's pride and joy, the playhouse in Yucca. I mentioned the family home burnt down. This playhouse still stands, and my Tata Tony built this for his 7 girls, you know. Maybe that's what finally gave him the boy. He built them a playhouse, I don't know. But, yeah, the playhouse up front was what he built. The building in back was added on later. So again, something my mom and I talked about when the weather gets better. We would like to go see for ourselves and get our own picture, and if anyone wants to tag along, Yucca Playhouse, we're going. And this picture I put in here because if there's time at the end, if you're not sick of hearing me talk, this is Aunt Gertie and Aunt Jenny with me in July of this year outside the Mayo Clinic with this beautiful cactus garden that they had and their walking sticks. And I know there's one in here because they usually have a cane or walking stick. If there's a story left at the end, I would like to share it with y'all because again, it's a great memory. We now move on to the next daughter, Gertrude Bees, who we call Aunt Gertie. These are 3 out of her 4 children. We have Larry died, Victor died, and Laura died, now Zumo. There's more of you, Cheryl, I swear, but again, you know, I work with what I had. This is Aunt Gertie and Aunt Tally. Look at those dresses. She was trying to remember what she got dressed up for. Yeah, this screams the 70s, and it's a tie-in to Cousin Zibby here. This is out at the Knight Creek Ranch. That was our truck. And that was Zibby and Mickey's truck, see? So I know it's probably really small faces for y'all in the back, but we have George and Rosalind Boone. Look at that here of Rosalind on the left. She'll deny it, but that is Rosalind Boone. We have Aunt Helen, who was a sister to Nana Catalina. Tata Tony's in there somewhere. Aunt Kate, Aunt Gertie. Again, scream 70s. Look at the haircuts on those 2 guy boys in the back. One was shaggy and probably a beard, I'm guessing. And then we have cousins Roberta in there, Roberta Noli, who was George Boone's half sister. So just a great family photo, and Laura Zumo in the little 70s looking shirt there. Scream 70s again. This was Aunt Jenny and Uncle Duke's 25th wedding anniversary. Nana Catalina, Aunt Kate, Aunt Marion, Aunt Gertie, and a soon-to-be mother, I think she had me by this time, Ernestine. This photo was taken at my Nana Catalina's funeral in 1985 in Aunt Gertie's backyard. It was one that I gave Cheryl, so I really do have a photo of you. Cheryl's oldest son, Nicholas. Laura's oldest daughter, Mandy, who also unfortunately passed away in the last 2 years. And then we have cousin Bucky. So that is Zibby's nephew, and we lost him as well. We have cousin Katie Van Brunt, and then there's great Aunt Linda on the right. I will give her more homage later, but she was in that photo. Uncle Chewy, Jess and Renata in the back, and Uncle Duke. And just the family doing family things in Aunt Gertie's. Another family photo. There's cousin Victor again, Sean Zumwalt, Laura's husband, Aunt Alice. Aunt Alice, I'm doing this out of chronological order because you cannot get a picture of that woman. She does not like to have her picture taken. You all will attest to that. So remember that face because I have very few of her. My hair screams 80s, so I believe this was like 87, 88. We have cousin Megan in there, Victor's daughter, cousin Alec, who was Laura's son. We'll have more photos of him. Cousin Mandy, and then Nicholas's little baby brother's back there, Christopher. And then Aunt Virginia again, and John Turner, that's right. And then that was Bob. He wasn't really an uncle, he was Aunt Alice's partner at the time, but Uncle Bob may as well have been. Just an old photo that included Mama Catalina, because again, didn't have too many photos of her back when she was young, so I was trying to pay homage to her with other photos. And there's Aunt Gertrude. And Aunt Laura again, right? Great Aunt Laura? Yeah. Yeah. And there's the sisters at some family event again, outdoors. Just love their smiles. Sisters again, including my mom Ernestine. There's Aunt Kate's smile again. And then Aunt Gertie with her grown granddaughter Mandy, and Mandy's two children, Ella and Warner. And Warner is about 8 feet tall. He just came to see us on Friday. It was a nice surprise, and that's Laura's first grandson. They both live in Indiana. This was at Cousin Victor's memorial. He was a cowboy fan, true and true, so they planted the flag for him. And Aunt Gertie with some of her other grandchildren. And Cousin Cheryl is right there in the center by her brother. And then there's cousins Megan and her children Angeline and Vinny, and apologies on the third one. That was also at Victor's memorial, just showing more of the family. Again, the numbers are, dying down. Don't get together too much. We're spread all over. But Cousin Gary's in there on the right. And again, just another family get together. This was Aunt Kate's funeral in January 2022. Good picture of the sisters. And I threw this in here because to me there's no better way to spread history than through cooking and recipes. Get them while you can. Because these women, they don't tell you. It's, a little of this and a little of that. Yeah. And I tried videoing, and I swear when I blink, they find something and put it in and don't tell you. So we were making my nana's abondega soup, which is a Mexican meatball soup. Yeah. She never wrote it down. She cooked from here. We did our best by taste to reverse engineer that recipe, just to have some comfort and reminisce about recipes of the past. So highly recommend, if y'all can share recipes, do it now. Jenna, I did not have too many pictures of Aunt Gertie's daughter Jenna. She needs to become a pioneer. Cousin, let's work on that. She is a doctor in Phoenix and has 2 daughters of her own. They need to become daughters when they turn 18. It is on this generation to continue and move this group forward. Again, there is a walking stick story, hence the picture on the left. I really hope that you give it. Cousin Alec, I mentioned we get to him later. He is a hitting coach for the Kansas City Royals, and he won himself a World Series ring his first year with the Royals. He is at spring training right now in Phoenix, and that is Cheryl's oldest boy, Nicholas, who is very musically inclined and talented, and is driving a band around right now for some performance. And then that is Cousin Jenna again, and Aunt Gertie's granddaughter Tori, who lives here in town, with Alec as well. Dr. Jenna Dye. And this is the newest member to the Tampa Acuna lineage. Alec has a senior in high school and now a 3-month baby girl. 4 boys and 2 girls, so he's a busy man. And this was the trip that I took Aunt Gertie to in Phoenix. She flew out to go see her new great-granddaughter for the first time right around Christmas. Aunt Alice, I mentioned we don't have lunch on Great Aunt Alice. She was born April 10th, 1932. This is her with her partner Bob. And then we have Uncle Tommy in the back, Aunt Virginia and Uncle Duke, and John and Catalina. Aunt Alice was a teacher. She went over and taught in Germany. And when she came back, she brought one of the first manufactured Volkswagen vans with her. And I remember seeing that thing in the 70s and the early 80s. It lasted forever. She would drive down here from Berkeley and That orange VW van was my memory. Yucca 1983 reunion. Now, not all of these girls went to the Yucca school, but they were there to represent their sisters who had. So we have, and Aunt Virginia was in charge of the Yucca school reunion. There's a surprise. So Nana Catalina, to her left, Aunt Kate, Aunt Tatley on her right, Aunt Marion. Then we have Aunt Gertie, Aunt Alice, Aunt Virginia, and my mother. So all the girls there for that Yucca reunion. Favorite iconic photo next to my Tata and the Saguaro. The sisters. This was Aunt Kate and Uncle Chewy's 50th wedding anniversary in Flagstaff in the 80s. And they're standing in chronological order, so I can't mess it up. Kate, Tally, Mary, Virginia, Alice, Bertie, Erna. Did it. And everyone in the family loves this photo. I believe my husband Kevin took it. We were not husband and wife at the time, we were dating. And everyone just loves this photo and asks for copies of it. Finally, the boys. We have Arthur and David. And I mentioned Uncle Art was born with that tumor on his face. He was born September 12th, 1940. Passed away April 14th, 1962 at the age of 21. Motorcycle accident on the way down to Bullhead. And then Uncle David was born June 29th, 1942. And he is still living in Kingman. And we have the boys again. There's little guys, look at that, 1942. That picture labeled, and there was a story with that bush. It was the only bush in Yucca. What kind was it? Somebody just told me this. Pomegranate. Yeah. And there used to be six, but I guess that's the lone survivor. This was at Uncle Matt's funeral in 1981, so that's currently what Uncle David looks like, maybe a little more gray now. But again, just trying to give a quick respect to the men of our family, trying to focus more on the ladies. And again, some of them were sunflowers were the theme. I'm guessing our cousin Lenore was involved. She always has some type of themed party. And now we get to the last of the daughters, Ernestine here on the left. I'm gonna use this as a pointer since my laser pointer doesn't work. So we have Arthur, David, Tommy, and then a young Ernestine, my mom. And I told you I was around at that photo in the 70s. That's me looking very happy. Here's me looking extremely happy. So I'm not going to focus too much on me because, again, it's about the shoulders of these women that, I stand on. So they're going to get most of the credit. But the next generation is also going to get some credit. I mentioned my mother made sure her two granddaughters signed up. Well, those are her two granddaughters and her grandson. My children, Kelsey, Kyle, and Kayla. So we are going to try to get Kayla out here. She's in graduate school in Los Angeles right now. One, to thank you all for the scholarships that you supported her and her sister with. And then just to tell you what she's doing with her life. She's getting her graduate degree in athletic training. And she's currently assigned with the professional soccer club out of LA, the LA Galaxy right now. And their season just started, so people are going to get hurt and she'll be busy.
Yes.
Our son Kyle at high school graduation, Nana with her granddaughter Kelsey. And that was Kayla's first college graduation out at Bowling Green, because again, now she's doing graduate school in California. Both our daughters were collegiate gymnasts. Unfortunately, Kelsey had to medically retire due to injury, but Kayla finished all 4 years as a Division I gymnast, and we got Nana to as many of her events as we could. And yeah, showing my mom and her, I love her in that dress. She just wore it yesterday for St. Patrick's Day. But supporting her grandson, go see son. This was last March. I wanted to show this because this is very recent. This is the Palo Verde cactus in my mother's front yard that normally does not have to carry any snow, let alone 3 days worth of snow. It busted 4 branches in her front yard, and my husband and I just happened to be here. They would have been blocked in. They would have not been able to get out of their home. And those are the branches that collapsed. And so for scale, I made my mom shuffle out there and get a picture. So that was just a year ago. Aunt Virginia came through for a visit to our home in California. So a bit of a generational picture there with my youngest Kayla. This was last year in the Wallabies. We had a memorial for the family members I mentioned we lost. Cousin Mandy, Cousin Victor, Cousin Gaynell, and also great Aunt Linda. So the family got together in the Wallabies, and this was one of the photos. I do have these shots here. And again, 10 children, 4 girls and 2 boys are all that is left. So the younger generation, we kind of labeled this picture the last of the Mohicans because they're all that's left. Aunt Alice and Uncle Tom did not make the event. But we have cousins Teresa and Trudy who need to become members of the daughters. Am I getting through to my fellow relatives here to help me get them in here? Cousin Laura, cousin Priscilla Sue is there. There's cousin Mike, cousin Davey, and Philip, and Jenny's oldest son. Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda she's a tough woman. I mean, my memories of her, jeans, cowgirl belt, boots, and that woman did it all. She cooked, she cleaned, she ranched, she did what she had to run a homestead. And there's great Uncle Mike. Here she is, and I love the overall outfit that she has on. And this is Aunt Linda on the left in the sassy skirt. How many of you ever saw Aunt Linda in a skirt? Zibby, there it is. Proof.
Not a short.
Yeah. And then that's with Aunt Tally. And then there's great Aunt Linda again on the left. This was out at Aunt Virginia's. Again, it's just to show Aunt Linda and Uncle Mike as I started to remember the memories I have. And then just the Acuna Campa family there. So you're hearing the two names. I'm about to get to the third name, Chan, I promise. So here we are. This is where restaurants 2, 3, and 4 come in. I knew about the House of Chan because I worked at the House of Chan. And I had heard about the Holiday House, and I had heard about the Jade. This is what blew my mind. After a quick visit with Mary, I know it's very small. In here is the story of her father, Charlie Lum, and Shorty, and Charlie Lum's father. The corner where El Palacio sits that used to be Desert Drug, I'm told. Kingman Drug, good Lord. Was not there it is. This is El Palacio now. This says the Boston Room. That was the first restaurant that Mary's grandfather opened, and it later became the White House. You will see some older photos. I've seen them, but they were too small to try to blow up and make it worthwhile. So her grandfather opened this Boston Room right here that eventually became the White House. So if you ever see any old photos with the drugstore and the White House, I want you to think back to Mary Chan. And then they went on, Charlie Lum, to open the Jade. I have very few memories of the Jade. I've never seen the sign. Holiday House. My husband Kevin spent time at the Holiday House as well as the House of Chan. So if it wasn't crazy enough to be related to 2/3 of Kingman via Campa, Noli, Acuna, and all these other names, I chose to be related to the other part of this town, the Chans. And you all know their names. I know you do. We have Jay Chan, worked out at Ford with Larry. We have Alan Chan, who owns a Ford dealership in Flagstaff. And then Elaine. See, there you go. And Elaine and Cheryl share a birthday. And they used to tell people they were sisters, and people believed it. And I'm like, all right. And we have Jay and Alan there on the right. And then this is Mary's dear husband, Uncle Tommy. I never saw him like this. I always saw him cooking in the kitchen at House of Chan. And when he wasn't cooking for the restaurant hours being open, he would cook on his day off if family came to town. If family came from Los Angeles, Tommy was in there cooking on Sunday. Mary was entertaining. If Alan came from Flagstaff, if any relative came in on his day off, he cooked. And that's the memory I have of Uncle Tommy. And here's Uncle Tommy not cooking. I couldn't believe it. Susan Chan, Mary J. Chan, academic community, I know you know her, and her mother, Betty Rowe Lawrence Rowe, got that out of order. We have a young Mary Chan in the back in red with Tommy. This is Alan Chan, not present day, but obviously not in that little cowboy get out. And then there's Jay as well. And then those are aunts and uncles from out of town, Ken and Esther. Again, he would cook for them. They would drive over in the middle of the night after closing their restaurant, get here in wee hours in the morning, have coffee, cook, and visit. Family photo to prove that this is how I got into the Chan family. Kevin Chan is my husband. Those are two of our children, Kyle and Caleb. And Mary, I'm going to ask for your help on this. I know this is an aunt on Kevin's dad's side. We celebrate decade birthdays for this woman. This was her 90th. And they didn't didn't know if 100 was going to happen, so they kind of cheated. We did a 95. She is alive and well, so we're hoping to go to the 100th birthday. And out of respect, we would call her Suklu, right? She is the great aunt of the family right now. When we're just with Mary, we refer to her as our Sukmu, the eldest or most respected aunt. Well, of the family, she is the Sukmu, the aunt. Ooh, wrong way. And here's Mary with one of her great-grandchildren. This is Ava, and there's Betty Lawrence Rowe as well, one of the gatherings. 2 more great-granddaughters. Mary was blessed with 6 great-granddaughters, I think, but we finally have a great-grandboy. He's coming out. So this is Kayla with the great-grandson, Cohen. Stephanie is the mother to both Ava and Cohen. She is a successful nurse practitioner in Phoenix. I show this because this is a memory. Ava had never had a s'more before until she came to our house. They were coming through to go to Disneyland for the first time. And this is where memories are made, and they're the ones that I think are important because it just tickled us to death that we gave her her first s'more. Because every visit after that, as soon as she hit our front door, she was on her way to the backyard pool and fire pit going, s'mores, s'mores, s'mores. That's what she remembered, and that just, was a special place in my heart that we were known as the s'mores people. Future daughter, I will try to get her enlisted when she's of age. Here is Elaine, not a little Elaine anymore. This was at Mary's granddaughter Abby's wedding in Flagstaff. That is Kelsey with the young Ava, and Kelsey is holding Elia, another great-granddaughter who lives in Minnesota right now. Kevin's like, oh my gosh, that looks like our daughter's baby. I'm like, I will clarify that is not our daughter's baby. She is getting married though. That's going to conclude the slide. Our oldest daughter's engaged and will be married in North Carolina this fall. This was at Susan's 60th birthday downtown at Rickety Cricket. Did I get that right, Susan? All right. We threw her a surprise party. That's little Ava there, Auntie Elaine, and Susan and Stephanie. Again, have to give a little nod to our men in the family. Love this photo, Mary. This is one of my favorite pictures. So we have a grown Jay, a grown Alan. This is Ryan Chan, who works with Alan at the dealership in Flagstaff. My husband Kevin, and then our son Kyle. So important generational photo to make sure it is marked on the back here and who's in it. And Jenny taught me well. Here are Mary's great-grandchildren. I mentioned I think she had 6. Well, there's 5 great-granddaughters, and then little Cohen. So there are the next generation of daughters in that photo. And then another trip to Disneyland where they visited Kayla. She lives 2 blocks from Disneyland, so we crashed her place and had a breakfast. And then that's Ava and Eden, who is another granddaughter that lives in Minnesota. And Ryan with Lauren. Thanksgiving in Susan's backyard. So there's Ryan with his family, Joy, Madison, and Ryland. And then we have Auntie Mary in there, who is their great-grandmother again. Ryland, Maddie, Colin, Ava, Susan and Jay, and their grandchildren. Why is Susan not a daughter? We need to work on that. Okay, proof that I do have a husband and proof that I do have another shirt besides that. I swear I put this together. I'm like, that's like 3 photos in that shirt. We went wine tasting. This is my husband, Kevin. Just focusing on our kids. They are not that little anymore. These 2 are daughters, and we will do our best to get them more involved. One of these was at Aunt Gertie's house because she would help watch them from time to time. Significant moments, got her driver's license, we cried. We moved to California, as I mentioned, so I have to throw in the token beach photos. The beach was their backyard, like the Boreana was the backyard to these women here. And then they grow old as they do, so that was celebrating 21st birthdays for Kayla and some type of North Carolina cocktail. Disneyland was a big thing for us too, when we were in California. Just some Thanksgiving photos there. Gonna try to get these young ladies here at some point to be involved. Wine tasting. And the engagement. Kelsey and Brian are engaged. I will have to add the McGinnis name to our relations. November wedding in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I'm gonna conclude my soapboxing. We have the family we're born into, and that is so important. But we have the family that we meet along the way, the friends that they're just there, you know, for important moments of your life, good, bad, and different. One of them is in this room, Miss Sue Snell. Shereen Petrie's in there, Judy Rhodes, who comes on occasion, and then Marilyn Swanson, and then Anita Roy. So these gals have been friends ever since high school. And they were there for my mom with her big surgery. They were there for me. And I'll be ever grateful for that. This was their 60th high school reunion at Tommy's 63rd or 60th? 60th, yeah. At Tommy's. Mocktails, cocktails, I don't know. And
You should, you were bartending.
I know. So I know it was a lot of information and I probably talked way too fast, but again, these are just part of the stories of why I'm here, but more importantly, the stories that I need to take responsibility for with the help of my cousins to continue. We don't want the legacy of these three important pioneer families, Chan, Acuna, or Campa, just to go. And I don't want that for any of your family's names. So if we can think of creative ways to get these younger women involved, I say let's do it. Amy. That's why I gave Penny a big hug. I went to high school with Amy. So again, we grew apart, but I'm gonna own it and try to get more involved. If you have 5 minutes, may I tell the walking stick story alluded to in the picture? I'm hurrying. My aunts went with me to be with me for my mom's big surgery. They had sticks bigger than this, you saw.
Yeah.
They went everywhere with them. They asked, Kathleen, if we can do anything for you with your mom's surgery, let us know. So I said, I need you to be there for the second one, because I had no one. The other family was there at the beginning. 5 days later, she had another massive surgery. They said, we'll go. Hopped in the car, drove to Phoenix. They had these walking sticks everywhere they went, and I took the responsibility. They're the matriarchs of our family. I gotta keep an eye on them. I gotta take care of them. Phoenix in July, it's already 100 degrees at 7 in the morning, so I had to try to find close parking at the Mayo Clinic. Well, a bunch of people are sick and already there at 7 in the morning, so I could not park close. This is the only time I left them out of my sight, because they were with me all the time. I dropped them off and said, this attendant will take you inside. Please wait for me. I'm gonna go park the car. So I parked way out. I'm running in 105-degree weather to get there. I was gone 2 minutes. Only time I let them out of my sight. My mom gets called back for her surgery. They have a quick visit. We go down to the cafeteria to wait. While we're there, this gentleman who was 6'5", bald head, looked like the OxyClean man. You've seen those commercials? The OxyClean guy, he was the OxyClean guy. They're in the cafeteria and I'm there with them, you know, following them. He walks by and he goes, hey, there's my gals with the walking sticks. And they go, and I'm, what is happening? You know? And I'm going, what was that about? So we get our food, we sit back down, and I'm seriously going, I gotta ask them. So I'm like, what was the walking stick shaking for? And I'm like, I didn't let them out of my sight. I've been with them. How do they know this person? And then it hit me, oh my gosh, when I parked the car. Well, apparently in the 90 seconds to 2 minutes I was parking, Mr. Security Man came by and saw these two beautiful women with walking sticks this big, and they're this big. And he says to them, what are you ladies doing with those sticks? And they said, we're gonna beat you with them. So 2 hours later, there we are in the cafeteria, and he walks through, and they made a friend. They were now known as the walking stick ladies of Mayo Clinic. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time. And again, I'm very
I am not from Shannon, so I don't know a lot of the history. But I do know some of the history of the Acunas because Gertie worked with my mother at J.C. Penney's. So in our home, we refer to her as Saint Gertie. She's always been very special to our family and just a wonderful person. And in that longevity, I did know she had this huge family. But keeping them all in order has been